Hi, everybody. I'm going to begin today to talk about some of the intricacies of the awakening process, which some describe as the ascension process. I've been writing about it more because once the call from the soul is heard and the response is a resounding yes, more and more of the inner psyche begins to mobilize to help us move through what I discovered is an enormous process, and definitely one not for the faint of heart. That said, I've spent a lot of time being faint of heart. So it makes sense to begin to describe some of the signposts that I have experienced, am experiencing, and will experience that may be applicable to some of your processes. My thought is if you're listening today, you're undergoing a profound deconstruction, dismantling, and return. Right now, my favorite name for this is return. I don't think it's ever happened quite this way before, where a certain portion of the population has pre agreed to awaken in their bodies, redefine their humanity to include source, primordial, mother, universal, spirit. There's so many names, and each one rings true to a certain portion of us. I personally love the word universe, and I also love the word primal or primordial, because for me, it engages the core longing that must have brought me here in the beginning, most likely many millions of years ago now, to return the soul to the human over and over and over again. I've always felt like this is the one way that has the deepest potential to serve an entire population of sentient beings, and also a way to report back to the cosmos that we are getting the memo en masse, that it's possible for a population to awaken, at the very least, a portion of the population to awaken, which then manages to stand in for many, many thousands of others. At least I so believe. I think it was David Hawkins that found a way to identify for every awakened being. There's a frequency that flows into thousands of others. And I remember being very excited by that. I'm wondering how I'm going to begin to talk about some of what's been happening. For myself, it feels emotionally extreme and condensed right now, which for me is a horrible and beautiful thing both. The horror is the way it feels and the enormous pressure it puts on my personal toolbox to keep my head above water and to endure a reconstruction. The beauty is that when it gets this profound and words leave us because we can't really describe correctly how intense it is, it must mean that we're getting very close. So if anyone else is experiencing what they would consider extreme symptoms of any kind that are mental, emotional in nature, and for some of us physical, after you've done what you believe is appropriate, meaning some of us go to doctors, some of us look for holistic remedies to try to help whatever's coming up for us, then after the process of trying to help ourselves that way, we often discover that the old earth human is no longer being supported by the rules that we've lived under. And so there is a certain level of death and rebirth that takes place. And because we are sentient beings, I've noticed that we, at least many of us, have to feel the reconstruction process. And I dare say that egos don't especially appreciate having to reconfigure. So they might argue, sulk, convince us that this isn't very helpful. All the while that there is a deep knowing that something extraordinary is happening. And the deep knowing continues and deepens and takes up more of our psyches, which I call awareness. So there's many days where we're aware in 5 minutes and gone in the feeling realms as we're releasing or purging in the next 5. I do understand by now that everything that's occurring is an assorted cornucopia of efforts to help us by the various parts of us, the mind, the emotions, the mind especially, because the mind in this experiment was absolutely trained to be the end all and be all. It's convinced that waking up is like a foreign invader or an unrecognizable species. And so, in its own wisdom, it lets us know that that territory may not be appropriately moved through in a safe way. And because we've been trained to believe our minds for a long time, there's this ongoing, I call it like an argument, where the mind is describing the process as crazy or confusing, ignorant, you name it. And the soul is already approaching that 51% harmless point where it knows we've said yes. And the yes has such a high level of frequency to it because it's aligned with probably the largest reasons why we're here. And that knowing has the rest of the universe lined up to show us step after step after step of what to do, how to do it, and who is available to assist us, whether it be human teachers, kind or unkind, whether it be books or dreams, or those that we pray to, or the awakening of the inner planes where our own clairvoyant, clairsentient, claircognizant, clairaudient skills begin to form, and we begin to inner see, inner hear, inner know, inner feel. Ultimately, I believe it's all one. In the dualistic world that we've been living in, it always appears as one or the other. But according to the timed cycles that have been around for eons, we appear to be at the end of one cycle where dualistic consciousness has ended its reign and we are being infused with amazing cosmic light that pleases our earth very much and helps the rest of us to awaken that are on the path to awaken. I must say, I honor us so deeply. And I know that when our time is completed here, we're going to understand even more deeply what we have done, where we began, what we moved through, and what we offered to this earth and her people and the greater cosmos. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, as always.